Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Something just came to my attention. This kind of involves the November 8th special shareholder meeting and some things you need to know. Some people are talking about AMC opening up the door for a potential acquisition. So I want to get into that. As well as that, I want to talk about how I see AMC stock right now. I've got quite a few comments, and I know you guys have seen these comments, of is AMC a squeeze trade at this point? Is it a value trade? Is it both? Is it just not a trade at all? So I'm going to give you guys my opinion, at least how I am looking at this stock, because it has certainly changed over time. That's for sure. So let's get into it. Hopefully you like this video. If you do, or if you are an investor in AMC stock, hit the like button, as well as subscribe to the channel and comment down below. So first thing I want to dive into is the first thing that we talked about. So what is essentially happening is we are getting some new proposals to vote on. Now, the proposals that we are voting on are a couple. Now I think they just summarize it pretty well right here. It says investors pick who's on the board. Number 2, if proposal 1 is approved, who do you pick on board? Number 3, voted on separately by stockholders. Votes needed for a particular action, share count for kick someone off the board. Allow stockholders to request meetings. 20% votes needed. Now, a lot of people are focusing on that 20% vote needed number. And there's even talk about potential dividends as well. So I also want to get into that. But let's go ahead. That's not it. Let's go ahead and get into this situation just a little bit more. So this says right here, removing the restriction on stockholder called special meetings from our certificate of incorporation, together with the bylaw changes implementing a mechanism for such action, represents a meaningful increase in the voting rights of our stockholders and is consistent with investor feedback as well as our and the board's continued commitment to corporate governance excellence. The board supports a special meeting right for stockholders, so long as the request is made by stockholders owning at least 20% of the voting power, in accordance with the procedures set forth in our proposed Fourth Amendment and restated bylaws. Stockholders owning at least 20% of the voting power may request that the security of the company call a special meeting of stockholders. Now, what this means basically in English, again, you have to have 20% of the shares to call a special meeting. Now, if you have 20% of the shares anyways, you're on the board. Okay, if that's something you want to happen. Now, they're changing things a little bit. They're making it so you kind of have to vote for it. But typically, if you are an investor in any publicly traded company and you own 20% of the shares, you have a right to be on the board. That's just how these things kind of work. So what AMC is actually trying to do here is make it so a small group, relatively small group of investors cannot call special meetings. For an example, we own a lot of the float together. So if there was one central issue that we want to call on, AMC to discuss and have a special shareholder meeting, then we cannot do that, even if 80% of us voted for it or wanted it, because not one of us is a 20% holder. So today, how it works is essentially anyone can call on a special meeting. It never happens. Nobody ever really does. But you can. And you even seen AMC went through the court proceedings just a couple of weeks ago because they did not do a special shareholder meeting in over a year. So this really is just trying to more or less do two things. Take away your power as a retail investor, number one. Number two, it does make a little bit of sense, just given some people would want to take advantage of the way that it's currently set up and call a special meeting for everything, right? To some degree, you don't want to waste anyone's time by just letting anyone call special shareholder meetings. But at the same time, they are definitely trying to take away your voting power. Unless you have hundreds of millions of dollars that you're investing in AMC, that's exactly what is happening here. So it's one of those things where it's not a huge deal regardless, but it definitely doesn't look great. Now, as far as a potential, takeover or anything with this specific news, this is what everyone's pointing to as to, it could be like a hostile takeover. Maybe it's possible that they could use this leverage, right, by essentially, if we can no longer call for a special meeting, but if you're someone that is trying to hostilely take over the company, like an Amazon, you could buy 20% and hold all of the special meetings you want. I get it from that perspective, but it doesn't make it any easier to do a hostile takeover rather than not. It works the same, right? Whoever has the most amount of shares has the highest vote, and usually that's what ends up happening. If that's why, like Mark Cuban, for an example, he will not sell a company down to, well, maybe I should put it like this. He keeps 51% ownership of any company he owns that he wants to have an active say in, because at that point, he makes all the decisions. The other 49% of shareholders are along for the ride. So it really doesn't matter in the grand scope of things as far as AMC, a potential kind of hostile takeover. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. AMC stock is very low. It wouldn't be hard to acquire all of the shares outstanding. So just keep that in mind. I mean, let me know down below in the comment section. Would you guys like to see some kind of takeover, just an outright buyout of AMC from here? And probably wouldn't be on great terms, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is this. Subject F of this same exact document says, subject to applicable law and rights, if any of the holders of any outstanding shares of preferred stock or any class or series of stock having a preference over or the right to participate with the common stock with respect to the payment of dividends. Dividends may be declared and paid on the common stock at such times and in such amounts as the board of directors in its discretion shall determine. Now, nothing really sticks out to me as but besides the dividends, right? Dividend. So my opinion on this is we're probably not going to see a dividend for at least another year. Now, AMC is not the biggest growth machine organically. We're kind of just growing back to where we were pre-pandemic, and you're almost there. Now, if AMC can get profitable and they can actually turn a consistent profit, then like a 1 cent dividend, I mean, or a couple cent dividend would not be too crazy. I mean, let's just do some simple math on what that would be. Call it roughly 150 million shares outstanding times 0.01. That'd be $1.5 million. I mean, you could throw a couple cent dividend in there and, you know, it would only be a couple $1 million. Okay, so you could get a dividend at some point in the future. AMC did turn a profit of $8.5 million. AMC does have a debt problem, and I think that's a little bit kind of more important in the longer term. A lot of that debt does start to come due in 2026, a smaller percentage, and then more of that is in 2028 and 2030. But the way I see it as well, that I don't think you guys should lose sight of, is AMC wants the share price of AMC stock as high as possible because they are still going to sell stock at some point in the future. So if they can get the stock to $40 because they issue a dividend and shorts have to pay out that dividend, yes, that is true. If you are short in a stock ever, you have to pay out that dividend. Even if you own the options, you have to pay out the dividend. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever known that or experienced it, but that's why you'll see on some stocks the options are all weird, right? You have to pay out the dividend. So that's why a lot of the times it doesn't make sense to buy options on dividend stocks. But with that out the way, I do think at some point in the next 12 months, you probably get some form of dividend, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's sooner rather than later to try to get the share price of AMC higher. That's should be AMC's goal right now, is to get AMC share price as high as possible so they can raise capital. They just issued 40 million shares at $8 and collected about $400 million. If they could have issued those shares at 20, they would have made close to $1 billion. I mean, it's very, on the same 40 million shares, it's very advantageous for AMC to get the share price as high as they possibly can right now. So keep that in mind. That is something that you guys, you know, should remember through all of this. So there is that. Again, hostile takeover, it's possible, but I don't think this makes it any more kind of likely rather than not. I mean, it's the same kind of way corporate America has worked the whole time. Just AMC doesn't want individual retailer investors calling special meetings for nothing, and then they want to some degree take away your power. It's a power grab more than I would say it's anything else. And then again, as far as the dividends, just the math would make sense to see a small dividend, especially considering AMC wants to get the share price up as high as possible to raise more capital. And then ultimately, the shorts have to pay out that dividend, so that's very unadvantageous if you are a short seller. And just the overall dividend kind of, you know, how dividends tend to work in stocks. Stocks will usually rally into a dividend and sell off after by the equivalent amount of that dividend. So in the short term, that could, you know, cause some pretty explosive moves if that were to happen. So those are the topics I wanted to cover in the beginning of this video. The second part of this video is how I am personally looking at AMC stock. Now, things have definitely changed. 2 years ago, a year ago, you were not buying AMC stock with any form of value. Quite the opposite. You were buying AMC stock directly for a squeeze trade, directly for volatility and upside. Well, that has to some degree changed. Now, I think the risk to reward has changed the most. And really what I mean by that is when AMC stock was on these, you know, split adjusted prices at $50 to, you know, $80, there was, without a squeeze, we're talking without a squeeze, on a risk to reward basis with no form of squeeze, the risk reward was like 98% to the downside, 2% to the upside. And again, I want to point this out, without a short squeeze, just organically trading on investor sentiment. That's it. No shorts ever getting squeezed. The risk to reward looked really bad. And that was no surprise. I mean, everyone knew that. Well, now, even without a short squeeze, your risk to reward, even more so on a fundamental basis, looks a lot better rather than not. And again, I'll make the same argument that I made in the last video. AMC has a much greater likelihood, in my opinion, going up 50% to go back to about $12 per share, rather than falling another 50% to fall to $4 per share. Not even considering a short squeeze. That's without a short squeeze. So if you're someone that likes to take advantage of those opportunities, a savvy investor, I'll say, well, this is a great stock for you to buy right now. That's my personal opinion. I mean, you want to be the one that's buying the falling knife. As long as it's not a trap or it just continues to fall. But who knows that point? I think you've given AMC enough time to really digest all of this bad news. Unless AMC were to come out tomorrow and raise more capital, which does not look likely. Again, they want the share price of AMC as high as possible to raise capital. I mean, pretty simple. Pretty simple. You've gotten all the bad news. Everything bad has happened. AMC's business looks to be doing actually very well. Earnings are coming up here in just the next couple of weeks, and we're probably going to turn an even bigger profit than we did last quarter. AMC is pretty reasonably valued, if not undervalued, based on different metrics. If you look at AMC and evaluate it on a profit basis, well, the stock sure probably looks overvalued. If you value it on a sales basis, the stock looks significantly undervalued. Like, you're going to bring in more revenue this quarter than the whole market valuation of AMC, which would be like a price to sales ratio for a full year of a quarter of one. That's very, very low. So it really just depends the way that you value the company and the way that you see it, taking a combination of all of these factors. But my conclusion, I really like to use the price to sales ratio with unprofitable companies, or companies that don't consistently turn a profit. By my definition, AMC stock is pretty undervalued. At the very least, you could say it's close to fair value, but slightly under that fair value. And by slightly, I mean like $12 could be a kind of reasonable fair value for AMC, and that would be a 50% move from here. I think a good value for AMC is around 20, just without a squeeze, without anything else, fundamentally speaking. Now, I do still think there is going to be a squeeze. I think these things kind of go in cycles, right? Hype comes and goes. Market sentiment comes and goes. If we were to go through another 2021 kind of market, a lot of stocks would rally. AMC would rally. Everything would rally. Now, the last 2 years have not been that way. Or almost 2 years now, have not been that way. Quite the opposite. Stocks have done very bad, especially if you're unprofitable. So, I mean, shorts did not have a lot of reason to cover on short positions. They just held through the ups, held through the downs, and remain in their short positions. So, I do think at some point that will flip, and I really think by 2024, a lot of people are going to be in the markets to buy a lot of stocks that have gotten beaten down, like your AMC, your Fubo, your PayPal. Like, that's where I want to be invested heading into 2024, because those are likely the stocks that are going to do well. It's probably not going to be your Microsoft, your Apple, your Google, your Amazon, your even Nvidia potentially, that are the stocks to give you the next 5 to 10% in the S&P. It's probably your small and mid cap stocks that do catch back up. So I think even on a kind of cyclical market basis, AMC makes a lot of sense to buy, because you have that backdrop of where's the next 5-10% of the gain going to come from in the markets. Odds are it's the small and mid cap stocks that have really not gotten any love recently. PayPal is sitting at near lows. Fubo is basically at lows. I mean, these stocks have not done well. Even a SoFi for that matter, or a Snapchat, or a lot of these stocks have not done well. AMC in that camp as well, and I think a rising tide lifts all boats to some degree. I think at this point, a short squeeze is just kind of the icing on the top, and I think eventually that will happen. Eventually there will be a reason, there will be more hype, there will be something happening that will cause shorts to cover on short positions. But I think in the meantime, me personally, I'm looking at those longer dated options. I think to buy some longer dated options here, if you do see a 50% move in AMC stock, those are going to appreciate pretty aggressively in value. And you can always sell out some, keep some for free, ride those, get some upside leverage. So I don't know about a time horizon. I don't know when the markets are going to kind of buy your small and mid-cap stocks. I don't know if AMC is going to issue a dividend. I don't know if we're going to get a hostile takeover. I don't know what's going to happen as far as that sense, looking out the timeline. But I do still think there is the short squeeze here. You've never been more shorted than now. The stock's never been lower than this, like, ever. You're lower than January levels. The low in January, when people thought AMC was literally going bankrupt, was $10.35 per share. You are at $8.36 per share. It's simple, right? From this point, you'll see a lot of gains. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a fortune teller. But that's kind of my opinion. That's just basically common sense. I believe at this point. If you look at the technical factors as well, you've definitely bottomed, at least for now. The MACD is just went positive. You can see this by the bullish indicator right here. We've talked about it, right? Yellow line goes above the blue line. That is bullish. It did get flagged by Webull as a positive indicator, and the RSI is at 27.15, which is trending back up into a normal range. So this is all looking good as of right now. This is exactly where I want to be if I am an investor in AMC and looking forward to a rally, guys. So that is going to do it for this video. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and source your comments, questions, or concerns down below in the comment section. If you guys want to come trade with me live in real time this week and any other week going ahead into the future, hopefully come make yourself sweet tendies, and hopefully a lot of them, well, link down below in the description of this video. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.